ننتقل إلى هذه المقابلة الخاصة والمباشرة مع وزير الخارجية الأوكراني دميترو كوليبا الذي ينضم إلينا من كييف. أهلا وسهلا بك مع الوزير. بداية سؤال مباشر وسريع، هل لديكم آمال؟ ما هي نسبة الأمل لديكم في إنهاء وانتهاء هذه الحرب خلال هذا العام 2024؟ هل يمكن أن يكون هذا هو عام الحسم إنجاز التعبير؟
Well, first of all, allow me to say Ramadan Kareem to all Muslims, and I wish you a very happy month under God's protection and God's love bestowed on you throughout all of your lives, on you and your families. And of course, this is also the time to think about peace. And this is what Ukraine is thinking about every day, because we want peace more than anyone else. But I cannot give you any percent of how likely peace is in 2024, simply because of the continued Russian attacks on Ukraine and continued fighting on the ground. But every day we work to bring peace closer.
طيب، طالما أننا نتحدث عن السلام، في فكرة مطروحة من قبل أوكرانيا، تحدثتم عن مؤتمر للسلام قد تتم دعوة روسيا إليه. ما هي الفكرة هنا وما هي الشروط لدعوة روسيا لهذا المؤتمر الذي كيف تفكرون في عقده وأين ومتى؟
Well, we are talking about a summit of the peace formula proposed by Ukraine's president in 2022. So a month ago, presidents of Switzerland agreed to host this summit in Switzerland. So the location is identified already. The idea is to bring together as many countries as possible from all over the world, including Arab states. And therefore, the date of the summit has not been defined yet, because you need to reconcile a lot of schedules and negotiations are underway. And the idea of the summit is the following. The first summit will convene all countries who agree on the principles of the UN Charter and principles enshrined in the peace formula proposed by Ukraine. And then, following the first summit, they will, respective actors will engage in communication with Russia, and Russia will be able to attend the second summit, which hopefully will result in the end of the war. This is the diplomatic construction on how to reach just and lasting peace as a result of a diplomatic process.
طيب، دعني أسألك أسئلة عن الوضع على الأرض الآن. الرئيس زيلينسكي يقول بأنه تقدم القوات الروسية توقف، وأن القوات الأوكرانية الآن بدأت 3 خطوط دفاعية في شرق وجنوب وشمال البلاد. ماذا عن أفدييفكا؟ الجيش الروسي كان يتقدم وسيطر على أفدييفكا. هل فعلا الوضع بات مستقرا على الأرض كما يقول الرئيس زيلينسكي؟ لأنه ما نراه هو تقدم للقوات الروسية بدليل أفدييفكا، ما حصل في أفدييفكا.
Well, indeed, the small town of Avdiivka was taken over by Russia after months of heavy fighting, and you should realize one thing, that Avdiivka is a small town, and it takes Russian army, the great Russian army, months to capture one town, not a big city, but one small town. It speaks for the efficiency of the army, Russian army, and we wouldn't lose Avdiivka if we had sufficient supply of artillery ammunition in the course of the fighting. Now, President is correct in his assessment that Russian army has exhausted itself, and we brought additional reinforcements, and the situation on the front line on the ground is stable. At the same time, we continue to dominate on the Black Sea, and we recently sank a Russian Navy vessel, which allows us to keep Black Sea trade, commercial trade, under protection and control. and we also effectively repel Russian missile attacks. So if you take all of these elements as a whole, as a whole picture, then we can say that the situation in the war is balanced.
طيب هنا أريد أن أسألك عن السياسة الخارجية والوضع الدولي تجاه أوكرانيا بشكل مباشر. في أكثر من مؤشر وأكثر من تصريح من الغرب، من حليفكم الرئيسي، يقول بأن الحرب يجب أن تتوقف وأن كييف يجب أن تقبل بالتفاوض. يعني في آخرها كان تصريح البابا فرانسيس بالفاتيكان، يعني كان شخصية روحية أكثر منها سياسية، لكن أيضا إذا أضفنا إليها مقال كتبه رئيس السكاي ويليام بيرنز كان يتحدث عن نفس الموضوع وتصريحات أخرى. إلى أي درجة يعني تجدون هذه التصريحات ضاغطة عليكم جدية وقوية وقد تغير موقف أوروبا والغرب من أوكرانيا خلال هذا العام؟
Well, I have to counter-argue to what you just said. If the translation was correct, and I assume it was, you mentioned that there is a number of voices who call on Ukraine to make concessions. I am not aware of any other voice but the voice of the Pope. And we made an official, we came out with an official reaction to his words. It was inappropriate for him to speak about the war in these terms. But you also mentioned William Burns. I think if we are speaking about the same quote, it was largely misinterpreted and quoted out of the context in the media, because what he said was that discontinuing support to Ukraine would be an own goal for the United States, meaning that it would be against the interests of the United States to discontinue support to Ukraine. And I'm not aware of any other senior political statements calling Ukraine to make concessions. Quite to the contrary, if you look at the defense assistance packages delivered to Ukraine in the last 2.5 months since the beginning of the year, you see that the support is growing and countries believe in Ukraine and continue to provide support to Ukraine. So we should see clearly differently the statements, the statement that came from the Pope and the decisions that are being adopted by respective governments.
صحيح. الاتحاد الأوروبي يعني وافق على حزمة مساعدات ودعم مهمة بعد أن تجاوز يعني فيتو المجر ورئيس الوزراء أوربان هناك. هنا دعني أقول أنه يعني يقول أوربان بأنه سمع من الرئيس الأمريكي السابق دونالد ترامب بأنه في حال فاز في الانتخابات فإنه لن يقدم ولا دولار واحد لأوكرانيا. الآن الجمهوريون في الكونغرس الأمريكي يعرقلون يعني إمداد أوكرانيا بالسلاح. ألا يوجد قلق لدى كييف من وصول الرئيس دونالد ترامب إلى السلطة وتغيير الموقف الأمريكي تجاه هذه الحرب وموقف الجمهوريين عموما؟
Well, Ukraine has experience of working with President Trump during his first tenure. And we know the way President Trump sees the world and operates in the world. I think hearing what Mr. President Trump presumably said from someone else and hearing President Trump say it himself can be two different things. So let's wait until after the elections. Let's see the outcome of these elections. It will be the choice of the people of America, and we will work with whoever will be the new president or the old new president of the United States. But we are not afraid of anything because we've been through some very, very challenging moments, and we always found a way out of it with dignity and respect for our national interests. So let's not just, let's not fall before something happens. We stand firmly on our feet and we will continue to work with all governments.
الرئيس الأوكراني زيلينسكي كان قبل أيام في تركيا وقال أنه وقع اتفاقيات جديدة للصناعات العسكرية. ما الذي تهدف إليه أوكرانيا من التعاون مع تركيا؟ تركيا صديق مقرب من روسيا، فهل يمكن فعلا بناء مصانع أسلحة تركية في أوكرانيا دون أن تستهدفها روسيا؟ ما الذي يمكن أن تقدمه لكم تركيا هنا؟
Well, if Turkey was only a friend of Russia, they would probably not sign all these agreements with Ukraine, right? Turkey is a long-standing partner, neighbor, and friend of Ukraine. It is true they maintain their own relations with Russia, but when it comes to defense and security sector, this is where Turkish and Ukrainian interests align, because we are all interested in peace in the Black Sea region. And Turkey firmly supports independent Ukraine. The agreements that were signed in the presence of President Zelensky, they will help us to ramp up production of weapons, ammunition. And Turkey is not the only country that we are working on this track with. There are many other countries and companies who are willing to co-produce weapons with Ukraine, also because we, for a very tragic reason of the war, but we currently have state-of-the-art experience in military technology, and everyone is interested in it. So defense industries are booming now, and this is one of the hot topics, not only in relations with Turkey, but with other countries as well.
طيب، أيضا هنا في سؤال فيما يتعلق بعض التصريحات للرئيس الروسي فلاديمير بوتين، الذي دائما يتهم الرئيس زيلينسكي بأنه يخضع للإملاءات الغربية، وأن المفاوضات في اسطنبول قبل اندلاع الحرب كانت توصلت إلى مرحلة متقدمة جدا، وأن أوكرانيا وافقت على تقديم ضمانات، ويتهم رئيس الوزراء البريطاني في حينها بأنه هو الذي دخل على الخط وأفسد كل شيء من خلال الضغط الغربي على أوكرانيا. هل يزعجكم هذا هذه التصريحات؟ أولا أنه كان فعلا في مسار دبلوماسي في اسطنبول، وإلى أي درجة الغرب فعلا كما يقول رئيس بوتين هو الذي يحدد مسار التفاوض ويفرض الإرادة على كييف؟
Putin is looking for excuses and explanations to explain to the people of Russia and to the whole world why he failed in conquering Ukraine. Let's go back 2 years ago. He believed Ukraine was weak. He believed he would capture Ukraine within days, and he believed that Zelensky would flee Ukraine with his whole government. Ukraine is free. Putin did not conquer us. Zelensky never left Kyiv during the besiege of the capital by the Russian army. So to explain why he was wrong, Putin came up with the point that he's not fighting against Ukraine and Zelensky. He is fighting against the whole West in Ukraine. This is what you do when you are weak and when you are a loser. And this is kind of arguments that should be considered in a broader context. Now, everything President Putin is saying about the alleged agreement reached in Istanbul, and then the West putting pressure on Ukraine not to sign this agreement, is a lie. It's just a line of the Russian propaganda, and everyone who has time and courage to explore this period of time in details can find out that Putin is just making up facts.
طيب، تحدثت في البداية معي عن مؤتمر السلام، لكن إذا أرادت بعض الدول رعاية دولية الوساطة بين روسيا وأوكرانيا، ما هي الشروط؟ هل يمكن للرئيس زيلينسكي أن يوافق على لقاء مع الرئيس بوتين تحت رعاية أو وساطة دولية؟ هل هناك شروط؟
With all my respect to public diplomacy, let's leave some space for real diplomacy.
أنت لا تعتقد بأنه هذا ممكن؟ يعني الرئيس بوتين لا يمكن أن والرئيس زيلينسكي أن يتقابلا، هذا تستبعده؟
No, I'm just saying that if we are talking about negotiations taking place between countries, that some quiet diplomacy has to take place. Not everything should be discussed in public interviews, with all my respect to public interviews and diplomacy.
واضح. طيب الآن ربما لدي سؤالين أخيرين. البعض هناك يقول بأنه الرئيس زيلينسكي لم يعد يحظى بشعبيته التي كان في البداية فيها، وأنه يصر على الاستمرار في الحرب، بينما هناك آراء أخرى في أوكرانيا. طالما أنه لا تجري انتخابات وفي مشكل في إجراء الانتخابات، كيف نثق بأنه هذه السياسة التي يصر عليها الرئيس زيلينسكي تعكس رأي معظم أو غالبية الشعب الأوكراني؟
According to all recent polls, Zelensky remains unquestionably the most popular and trusted politician in Ukraine. There is not a single other politician who can compete with him. President Zelensky is not afraid of Russia and Russian aggression. Why should he be afraid of elections? He is not. But according to the law of Ukraine, which was passed before the large-scale invasion began, this law reads very clearly that presidential elections can be held only after martial law is over, which means after the war ends. To assume that Zelensky is interested in continuing endlessly the war to stay in power is a distorted and perverted way of thinking. He is the leader who consolidated Ukraine, who leads Ukrainian resistance, but he's also the leader who wants this war to be over as soon as possible, and he is making every effort to reach that goal. And when the war is over, and with Ukraine's victory, I have no doubts that Zelensky will remain the most popular political leader in Ukraine.
شكرا جزيلا مالي وزير الخارجية الأوكراني دميترو كوليبا لتخصيصك هذا الوقت لهذا اللقاء مع سكاي نيوز عربية على الهواء مباشرة. شكرا جزيلا لك.